There is a separate Learn to Swim guidelines being developed by ASCA in consultation with the government and others that will deal with Learn to Swim transitioning back in and using facility space. So these two don't sit together. They're going to be very separate. So I'm happy to answer any more questions. So we've requested the language change to take out the one per lane and just be limited to social distancing and obviously whatever the numbers are of groups that can get together. Now, hopefully, what I will say, this is my thoughts, is that if you're in a 50-meter pool, that you can have a group of 10 down one end and a group of 10 down the other end, and potentially you could have them all separate and you could operate in that space, or be even in a 25-meter pool. But again, that'll come down to the facility operator's interpretation. So we'll stress that a bit more later. So we get onto facility regulations, and again, these are the types of things that you're going to come across, and this is why it's really critically important that you have an established point person. If you don't already, and I know there's a lot that do, and I just want to continue to encourage that. Somebody from the club, or if it's coach-driven private enterprise and the coach, you need to have a person that is working with and speaking to the facility operators as soon as possible, if not already. And those facility operators can guide the squads, clubs back into the pool. And that point person should also be liaising with every connecting point. So you can see there, it's with the facility, the coaches, the club, the swimming association, to ensure that you're following the facility's requirements and everybody's preparing for that. So some of the questions are, how many can you have in at one time? When can we have the athletes, the staff in there, the times? So there's some common questions, common sense questions. And then once you've got that information, so the diagram on the right is really just one of the coaches has done this up, and it was really for the facility operator to show them that they had a plan for exiting and entering and exiting the pool, because there's going to be an exit, enter one door, exit the other door. So things like that, creating visual cues to show your facility operator, hey, we're prepared to do this. We're going to do this is how it's going to operate. So prepare to be having to have those kinds of strategies in place. Once you've got that information and you're really clear on that, I think the most important piece is to write it up, communicate it with clubs and members. That's the point person, that's the coaches. That's basically a strategy that needs to be put in place, and it's got to be clear communication. And I'll talk a little bit about that along the way, that I don't think we're going to be able to communicate enough in this space, because there are going to be restrictions. There are going to be things where only so many people can go into the pool. That means parents will have to consider drop-offs and pick-up points. So there's a number of things that we're hearing as we go through. The government requirements with those guidelines, that'll have an influence over what the facility does. And so, again, they're going to be interpreting that. So it's really being clear on what those guidelines look like. So having a very clear understanding together, collectively, okay, what does this mean? And I would encourage you to challenge it, like to offer. This is why it's important to offer examples so they can see how you can do what you want to do within that space with the social distancing measures being maintained. The one other piece that I apologize, I failed to put in here, this came up on a meeting just previously, is the costs of the facilities. Now, this is a really important piece. If you have a good relationship with your facility provider, hopefully they can, help you get back on your feet and get back in there. But I think it's going to be cost prohibitive as well. So your strategy going forward is going to be built around what you can afford and what you can't afford. And hopefully then you operate as a facility sorry, I thought I got muted there. So that's one thing to be mindful when you're talking to facilities. The other bit is that this is another addition. Those yellow ones I've added in attendance and tracking of athletes and groups. So just be bearing in mind that have a strategy around how you're going to take attendance and track the athletes. So I'll give you an example. If you're rotating squads around and somebody gets sick, the chances are that it'll shut the whole thing down. But if you keep them in groups and you know that Johnny or Mary was there on Monday and was only with these 5 athletes on Monday, then those in that space will be required to whatever the guidelines will quarantine or whatever it is. It's just making sure you've got something in place, and the facility operator, yourself, and all key partners are actually aware, and you do make that is a really important piece to this. So again, you've got a number of different ways of doing that. I'm not the expert in this place, but I would suggest that there's some very creative and clever people in our industry on the line who will be able to come up with ways there. And there's going to be many, many more pieces of information coming out in the guidelines that are attached to the AIS that the Swimming Australia will put out. I can tell you that. State and local council and venue operators rules may vary. This is just kind of to ensure that you understand that we know in Victoria that Daniel Andrews is got a certain way of doing things. He's a lot more tighter in certain areas. So just because that they come out and say groups of 10 nationally can meet, it might be, sorry, but in Victoria it's 5, or some venue operators might apply a different rule. So that's why it's important to have those relationships so you can get the most out of that.
Ro, can I just jump in there on the tracking? Obviously, the government app is there designed to do that. It's not mandatory. I'm not suggesting that clubs make it mandatory, but that's one thing that you can strongly encourage for any of your squads and stuff. If they are in those sort of groups, try and encourage them to have the app so that if someone does get sick, the tracking's a lot easier.
Yeah, and I think that will come out from Swimming Australia. I think and from all the states. Tim, I believe I saw that was one of the recommendations. So for sure, I think that's again, I understand there's concern about the tracking and all that. My personal opinion is I've got that many apps on my phone that God knows what's going on. If it's going to get us back to normal, I'm happy to do it. So that's my personal opinion. Squad management. So again, we've got the green light. The facility operator says, "Yep, we're happy to have you back in. We want your social distancing measures. You've got the plan. You've got all of the pieces ready to go." You move into the next piece, which is getting the squads ready. So again, the facility operator said, "This is how many you can have in the pool in the space." So you need to create a strategy around how you're going to do that. And again, there's a diagram at the bottom here taken from U.S. Swimming that this is what they're producing. This is how they see social distancing happening in a pool with, I think, I don't know how many are there, 2, 4, 6, was that 12 athletes? 12 in the pool, staying the distance apart. And so that again, that's kind of what you want to be looking at, is how you can develop that. Set a schedule out. Now, I would say, this is my personal thoughts, not everybody needs to get back in the pool every day. Every day, you might have a rotating schedule where you have certain groups getting back in 3 times a week. I mean, we've got a bit of time here. There's not going to be competitions thrown on just for the sake of having them. There'll be competitions at appropriate times. So we're not really rushing back. We want to kind of walk before we run. So I'd say my personal opinion is you try to get everyone back in the pool. Everybody gets a chance to have a swim because you want to get everybody in your organization back. But you also want to make sure you're grouping them appropriately. You have a point, you make sure that everybody understands what's going on and have that schedule. Give yourself that 4 weeks to take time to build. I said walk, don't run. This is another really important piece. Is we don't know. Well, first of all, I'd say the dryland programs have been successful. I think majority of the coaches I'm working with and speak to have some form of regular routine and structured dryland programs that they're running, whether they're doing it independent of the clubs. It is happening, and it's been very, very impressive. And I would say keep them going, and just start interjecting, bringing in your swimming, and bringing that into the program, but maintaining that. I think you're not going to be able to do that many swim sessions, so you're going to have to maintain some conditioning around that, as well as the most important thing is the mobility, shoulder mobility. Maintaining those types of things are really important. Also, if we have a flare up, they could shut everything down again, and you're going to have to have something. So just, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. So that's important around the management of the squads. I think also the communication piece, which I'll touch on down here. The likelihood is no parents will be on the pool deck. There'll be viewing areas. Again, I think your facilities will provide guidance there. But it's also really important that everybody understands what that role looks like. There won't be change rooms. Again, this is very unlikely. So it'll be, show up, get in, train, get out, dry off, and go. Now, again, that's what it's very much looking like. They're not going to have anybody in the communal change rooms. We talked about the cost of the access to facility. Can you afford it? That's going to really shape your strategy about how you go back and how many lanes you get and how you're going to do this. So it's really important piece that you apply. So if it's going to cost me $400 a week for the facility hire, I got to make sure I got enough athletes coming in, and that we can afford to that we can monetize it. And I've also got staff and all those things. So it's going to be an interesting development. So everybody's going to have to work really well together on this. So that's important.
Right. Can I just jump in? Sorry. For some reason, there's a whole lot of people. We've got a limit of 100 people on this meeting for some reason. So, and I thought we had a paid plan. So it says we're going to drop out in 8 minutes. So I'm trying to sort it. We might have to send you another link to continue, but keep going.
I thought we they're unlimited.
Well, so did I.
That's 40 minutes, is it?
Yeah, I don't know. Hang on.
That's less than 40 minutes. Well, it is 40 minutes since we've been on. Okay. Well, I'll keep going, and if we have to all jump back on, we will.
We'll send something out.
Yep. So we talked about attendance and tracking. Again, clear communication. So my suggestion is you run a parent session, everybody, to explain how the club's going to do this, but you managing the return to the pool. But you also, so to me, it's a need. It's not. I would take it further than a suggestion. This is a really requirement, and it's also a requirement that is done regularly, maybe weekly. So as the situation develops. So I really think that piece around, what we're starting with, what the purpose behind it is, who's going to get access to what, and how often, and what the requirements are, and let's just keep that communication open. We've all learned how to communicate really well through this process. So I think that's a really important piece. So this is just another example of where you can have kids lined up and standing. They've got 6 feet because it's America, but that's 1.5. You can see marks on the deck. So these are the types of things that you can provide to the facility operators. Say, hey, listen, we're prepared to do this. We're prepared to do all of this to make sure that we maintain the social distancing. Staffing payments. So this is probably, again, once you've got your strategy, comes with the number of sessions you're going to do. Are you going to maintain training fees or introduce training fees? And what does that look like? Obviously, we've got a balance between what's really happening in the real world. Are your coaches on JobKeeper? Are you coaches I'm talking to, are you on JobKeeper? If you are, well, how do you work that out? Do you maintain that? There's a lot of these things that need to be discussed. The groups are going to be small and we'll only need one person to run them. So again, it might be staging of staffing coming back. So that's a staff buildup, a strategy around that. And it needs to be very clear and communicated ongoing to ensure that everyone gets back and on deck and in the pool. So I think, these are some of the things that I've really think are really appropriate for the moment. There's so many other aspects that we can talk about, but I wanted to just give everybody some clear indication of what are the most important things that they should be looking at. I would suggest in my conversations with a lot of people, that's actually happening already. There's a lot of already conversations happening. And a lot of this is already going on. And sometimes it's just about reaffirming that you're on the right track. But I'm open to any questions that might be had at the moment. So Tim, maybe you want to open it up and see if there are any questions for me. Raise your hand if you want to ask me a question. I'll look for you. Or a comment.
Can you hear me, Rowan?
Yep.
Look, just one thing. I don't know whether I missed it at all, but do we need to take temperatures of swimmers and so on before they come in?
That'll be up to the facility operator. And so it'll be up to them to do that. And it could be a requirement. It could be. But we're not sure because it's happening in some places it's not. So I'm not sure. I definitely know that some of the things you need to consider is no one should show up to the pool if they're not feeling well. I mean, there's a number of those, and those will come out in the broader guidelines that Swimming Australia will provide. And I think some of it may say that temperature checks are something that need to be considered, but I don't know if it's a hard and fast rule, but I wouldn't rule it out, but I think it'll be individual based on facilities. Belinda? Tim, can you unmute Belinda? I can't do it.
Sorry. Yeah, hi. My question is just about have you had any advice from Swimming Australia, or when do you think these Stage B restrictions will go into place? I mean, obviously Victoria and Daniel Andrews are quite stricter than other states. I know Queensland and South Australia, Northern Territory, WA are all going to have their, things happen a lot quicker and easier. So do we have any advice on that?
Well, so based on the conversations that we had and what my understanding of the process is, these recommendations for modification to the guidelines have gone to the government. There's a cabinet meeting tomorrow, and apparently based on the advice, and this is not just about swimming, obviously about everything. There's a whole range of things. It'll be up to Victoria to determine as of May 11th if they want to move to softening restrictions and taking on the advice of the government, I assume, and that advice would be the advice that we're hoping will be applied, which could be next week. Basically, the answer is it could be next week, but it'll be up to our premier, I would suggest.
So at the moment, we're in Stage 4 restrictions. Swimming was shut down at Stage 1. So that's why I'm sort of thinking, will it be next week, or is it going to be, something that might be a little bit further down the track?
Well, I don't know. I don't know the answer. I this is the confusing piece for me. If the government comes out and says, get sport back going, and Phase B, if you look at the AIS guidelines, Phase B is what we would be looking at. It would be then up to Victoria to say, yeah, we're happy to adopt that and apply that. So yeah. They may not. And that's why I say we got to prepare. But even if, let's say it doesn't happen for a few weeks, we still need to start doing all this stuff. So it's
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So I think that's the thing that I'm very hopeful. I'm very optimistic because AFL is going to be going back, and you're going to have 40 blokes running around an oval in groups of 10. Tackling, well, they might not be tackling each other. I mean, you watched the news last night, and the rugby league guys are running shoulder to shoulder, passing the ball. Like, come on! Like, at some point, we hope that common sense will prevail a little bit and allow us. But that's my positive thinking.
Awesome. And sorry, just one more quick thing. In terms of membership, so for next season, is Swimming Victoria looking at putting some sort of package together for the new season, or are we just at this stage looking at it as business as usual?
I'll turn that over to Tim or Claire for that one. I don't have the answer, sorry.
Thank you, Ron.
Yeah. Who wants to answer that? Timmy, you want to answer that, or Claire? One of you guys. because Jack's not online tonight. So no.
Rowan,
What I can tell you, yeah.
Rowan, can I jump in? It's Anita here.
Hi, Anita.
Hi, I've spoken to Swimming Victoria about this a few times, and look, if someone wants to jump in and contradict, that's fine. But they said that they were thinking of actually increasing fees this year, and so they're just thinking of simply maintaining the fees as per what they have been, rather than increasing them. So that's as far as I know. I don't know if that answers your question or not, but that's what they told me.
I'm not sure that that's the case. I would say that I believe that there was some modifications being done, and I know discussions, but I don't want to speak about, because I'm not in those conversations all the time. Whether it's an increase, whether it's proportional, I'm not sure. But I think unfortunately, Jack's not on the call at the moment.
Yeah, I'll talk to her, Rowan. All good, all good.
Okay, great. No worries.
Rowan, after we get back in the water, the swimmers, how long do you envisage it would be before you could start competition?
Ooh, this is probably a personal opinion. And again, I'd preface it by saying competition for the purpose of what? So for me, competition for the purpose of introducing it as a kind of a training element or an engagement element. I would say you could do some things within a month to 6 weeks, but then again, I wouldn't want to put an expectation on performance being the reason you do it. It's probably more to keep people engaged. And in saying that, my personal opinion is very unlikely we're going to be able to have the ability to congregate to have a competition at a particular venue for quite a while. When I say quite a while, I'm thinking, probably till September. I don't know. This is just my interpretations. So I would say that organized competitions are a little bit off. But I think virtual, I think we've got to start thinking virtual competitions, and to keep the kids active. There's nothing wrong with, having a little competition within your own group at a pool while another one does it somewhere else, and you kind of, engage. I mean, there's lots of opportunities to do things like that. So as far as organized competition, I think there's a ways off before we can really seriously look at that, because we can't even get to a venue together until we know that.
Rowan, I have a quick question for you.
Yep.
Kristen here. I know some of you. I used to work at Swim Victoria, but I'm now working at a site. So I jumped in to kind of get a bit of what's happening with the clubs, because obviously we've got clubs to consider in this.
Yep.
What other centres do you know of that have reopened around the world that have implemented some of these, distancing rules around during training times? Because obviously we want to get you guys back in the pool as much as you want to come back. Has there been any effective measures yet, or is everyone still really locked down?
Well, there seems to be some movement in the US, but I definitely know South Australia is up and running, and I'm not sure, Adam, I know you're online here if you want to comment, because the Marion, the pool over at Marion is operating with Peter Bishop's, and I think there's another facility, but I don't know if you want to share anything with us, Adam.
Yeah, Rowan. Obviously, at Selk, we've got up and operating. We've used very much our Emergency Services Act. We've worked through the council and worked through the government, applied the 10 social distancing, one per lane. Marion Swimming Club start back on Monday morning. Bish and his team have been in for about 2 weeks. And then we've got the Olympic diving program here too. So we've got them going also. Some pretty strict conditions, temperature checks, work pretty hard in that space, stay away if you're not well. Use the online app and the online e-training for the kids. And they've all had to fill out a survey, intent to swim, and understand that education process. We've got a webinar in about 10 minutes for the club and all that type of stuff. So we'd assume that in a couple of weeks' time, we'll probably get the full club back and get moving and all that type of stuff. And there's ways around that, and happy to help anyone and Swimming Victoria, my old colleagues over there, and see how we go.
Adam, if I could ask just a quick one, and I know you guys have been operating on that one swimmer per lane. If the AIS guidelines are modified and they say, no more than groups of 10, but practicing social distancing, would you as an operator consider a group of 10, say Bish and his group down one end of the pool on one side, you've got two pools there, and then somebody else with a group of 10 down the other end, like as long as they're staying, is that something you would look at differently because of the removal of that one person to one lane thing?
So Rowan, as you're well aware, we geared up similar to MSAC. I don't know if anyone is on the line from MSAC, but geared up. Bish will have his own training time, so we quarantine those Olympic athletes out of anything, and we've got traffic flows coming in and coming out. So we go to that level where no one could cross over in a traffic flow, and we've got the little lap pool out the back. We've got the 25-metre water polo pool at the 50-metre pool. All operating. They're considered separate activities.
Okay.
And it's 10 on the deck at that time, and that includes 8 swimmers, a lifeguard, and a coach.
Okay.
So,
That's good.
So we're working in that. So it just works inside the guidelines rather than trying to test them.
Yep. Okay. Thanks for that, Adam.
No worries.
Thanks, mate. Appreciate it. Have we got any other questions online or anything that anybody got any thoughts? Again, I think it's preparing for being adaptable and, communication. Adam, I guess I want to ask you real quick while I've got you. From a communication point of view, how important has that been for you guys on a regular basis, just keeping people informed?
Oh, vital. So with the marrying guys, for instance, we've only been able to go national qualifiers plus 2%. So that's in the bylaws of Swimming SA. Swimming SA have been great in this space and aiding us with the council, with SAPOL, and with the government. And then back to the parents, because then there's those junior kids who all think they've missed out because the national kids, the top end, are getting everything. And you see a lot of that online on Swim, how can the top kids get everything? We communicate and sell it as a marathon, and we all want to get back in the water, and this is the easiest way to do it and the best way to do it. Everyone's pretty much okay.
Okay. What other pools open in South Australia? There's another pool training, isn't it? Isn't there another pool?
The Norwood are using their pool in the morning, and Starplex. So Starplex is a school pool. And that's a pretty good setup. And obviously the guys at Norwood are using the mornings out of their Learn to Swim facility. Okay.
All right. So there's a few examples that are happening locally. And I know Northern Territory is probably gearing up as we speak. Is there anyone online from Northern Territory, I guess?
Rowan, I can probably talk for the Y in the NT.
Okay, yep.
They haven't got squad access yet. It's only for casuals, but they're gearing up for that, I think, in the next 2 weeks.
Okay. Yep. That's good. Hopefully, I guess from my end, I'm happy to answer any more questions, but from my end, I think the sport will be providing more information when obviously certain decisions are made. We're always, in this current environment, we're always being, I guess, guided by the government's decisions, and that's what we need to do. And so we will do our best. But I guess my main message tonight was consider all of the factors that you are going to be dealing with. Build those really tight relationships with the facility operators, obviously the coaching, the clubs, everybody that's going to make those decisions. Be strategic, start planning, think of anything you could think of to talk to other people, conversations, and then more importantly, communicate, and make sure those expectations are being managed, so everybody's clear on that, and be adaptable. I think that's the most important thing, is we might prepare for something to happen and then it doesn't, but it happens a little bit differently. So we just need to be adaptable to manage it. We'll eventually get back to what will be a new normal, and we'll be back into swimming. We'll all be on the pool deck together, and we'll all see each other at meets. We might not be able to be within 1.5 meters of each other. That's okay. But we definitely will get there. And as far as I think we will have another conversation once we get a little bit more further into this, and we know we can start looking at how we can bring competitions back in and in what way and how those will look. And I think, but I would definitely encourage, start internally when you get the chance to create that. Not too early. I think just get the kids back in, give them a chance to swim, give them a good month to just settle in, everybody get used to it. And yeah, just build on what we've got as a new normal. And we will be back, obviously, using this forum to try to inform and keep communicating with everybody. But at any time, please reach out. I'm personally happy to help where I can, and the coaches out there are doing a great job. So we're definitely communicating, and obviously the Swimming Victoria team. But I know you on the ground with your clubs and the coaches, parents, administrators, everybody's really working hard to bring that community spirit back. But it's definitely, I can see it when I'm online here and see everybody online, because you really want to move back towards that, the way that we had it before. But I think the spirit's there, and I really look forward to seeing that. So if there's no more questions, I think
Tim, I'm not sure if you got to those last 2 questions on the chat.
I'm not looking at the chat. You're supposed to let me know, Tim.
Yeah. Well, that's why I was just waiting for an opportunity to jump in when you drew breath.
Oh, thanks, mate.
That's what's happening in New South Wales and Queensland? Do they have access? You might have covered that already.
No and no, they don't.
Okay. And Josh up in Mildura, will Swim Vic or Swim Australia develop some draft guidelines for training, or is this dependent on the clubs to develop guidelines? We want to be here as a resource. So from my perspective, and I had a number of meetings about this, we want you to be, we want to support you. Now, there'll be some that will want some guidelines and some structure, and we're happy to support that. So yes, the answer is yes, but we're not going to push it on anyone. So really, at the end of the day, I've already had conversations with coaches who are already well beyond thinking about it much more creatively than I could. So I think we want to allow you to do that, but we also want to provide some if you require it, we will provide ideas and support around that. But the key thing is there will be no standardized kind of, this is what you got to do. It'll be guidelines provided, and if you want more specifics, just ask. And just one administrative thing for those who are on, there were a number of people who couldn't get on because we had a technical glitch with the maximum number, and that's because I was hosting the meeting, not Jack. So if you're talking to people who are a bit grumpy because they couldn't get on, it has been recorded. We'll send that around. We'll make that available. So I'll send a message out apologising for all that. But if you're talking to someone and they couldn't get on, or they couldn't join because they were stuck with something else, just let them know there is a recording going to be made available. Do
we have their emails, Tim, or not? Because you could direct, you can direct contact them and just say, listen, we'll send it straight to them.
Can't hear you, Tim.
Yeah, sorry, Joff. I do that at least once a meeting, and there you go. I haven't spoiled my record. So yeah, I sent a message to everybody who was in the waiting room trying to get in, but I'm pretty confident I'll be able to do a report from Zoom as to who registered and who was on. So we'll send them a message, and sincere apologies.
One last thing, Rowan.
Yeah, mate.
I'm here representing technical officials. I will say from myself, and I would say majority of all technical officials, we will do whatever we can back in the water again and officiate at meets.
Well, that's fantastic, and I think what might end up having to happen, and I'm just making a prediction here, is that we may have to have competitions at individual pools where it's a virtual meet where everybody's running it in their own pool, and we're going to need officials to be at those pools. So that's nice to hear, and I think that's something that's very real that could happen.
We're here to help where we can.
That's great to hear.